Hi, I'm Laura. I'm originally from the UK, but I've been living in Brisbane for nearly 2 years now. I'm a photographer, I've travelled the world, and I have multiple fragments to my life that make me who I am. But I've also had anorexia for the last 5 years, and I want to share my story of recovery with you. So I am acutely aware that I've won the jackpot of being a straight, white female born to affluent parents in a country where life's necessities have always been taken for granted. And I'm extremely grateful for that. But having anorexia has always created this illusion that I've wanted to reject that and reject everything that I've been so fortunate enough to have been given. I've always scrutinised my faults, I've focused on what I haven't finished or what I haven't achieved rather than what I have done. And that's where my need for control has always begun. So I grew up with a healthy love and appreciation for food. I was tall, broad, vibrant, energetic. I've never been fussy. I've never pushed food around my plate or had to be bribed with the promise of dessert in exchange for finishing my main meal. I was regularly the first to finish my food and was always on to doing something else. I've never been lazy. I've always gone to bed late, got up early and had boundless energy and motivation to achieve new things on a daily basis. A day doing nothing has always seemed like a waste of time to me. There's so many things to learn, so many places to see, and so much of life to experience. And as sickening as that sounds, I've always had a hunger for food and a real hunger for life. Food became my friend, and that friendship only became toxic when it became my only friend. At 11 years old, my parents split up. My mum found a new friend in herself and in her female partner, and my dad began working abroad. I replaced them with my new relationship and my new friendship with food. I was bullied extensively in school. My mum and partner moved abroad, and not knowing a soul and the unpredictability of what to expect made me turn to the one thing that I knew I could always rely on and would always be there for me. I had strange circumstances in my life that anybody would struggle to deal with, and paired with being an only child meant that I completely turned inside out and hid within these fantasy realms of my own mind. I went through school and then I left and went straight into running a very, very successful business. And that paired with my fear of failure, the need to please everyone, having a mum obsessed with weight loss and a dad obsessed with exercise, I genuinely believed I wasn't good enough until I was thin enough and fit enough. And I don't know what clicked in my head. Something turned and I thought, I'm going to lose this weight, and I spiraled into this new world, a new false reality that anorexia had paid for me. I created toxic situations, believed starvation made me a better person, and I saw this emaciated creature in the mirror as the figure that I wanted to be. I tried to reach the unattainable goal of perfection to the exclusion of health, happiness and light. But years later, the sheer amount of time and energy spent thinking about food, calories, weight, exercise exhausts anyone. And what happens when your exhausted and worn down brain gets an influx of free time? It can't fight off the temptation of the disease, and more of that brain space gets taken up by more and more disordered thoughts. And only when you can no longer cope physically or mentally or function does it say enough. I was constantly preoccupied with food, and nothing meant more to me than my next bite, and nothing gave me greater shame than my last one. For years I was in a toxic self-loathing cycle. I identified the eating disorder voice, and it was the most pivotal aspect of my recovery, and I learned it inside and out. I recognised that this part of my mind was a completely different entity. This eating disorder voice was not healthy, it wasn't me, and it wasn't going to go away. I had to call it out every single time it popped up. I had to confront every single urge to obsess or indulge in disordered eating behaviours, which arose hundreds of times a day, and then work to correct them. It wasn't just around meals or exercise, and recovery was brutal. It felt like breaking up with a bad boyfriend whom I loved even though I knew I shouldn't. He treated me poorly, he ruined my life, but without him, who was I really? He was my best friend, and I had to break down hundreds but not thousands of rules, habits and rituals I'd created for myself. And since so much of this identity had been built around the framework of disordered eating, I literally had to relearn from the ground up how to build this identity. And it was painstaking and it was uncomfortable. And I thought recovery was walking along white sandy beaches with a soft smile and not sobbing for days at a time, or falling into dark holes of depression and not being able to sleep because suddenly the thing that was my best friend and the thing that had determined the largest part of who I was for years had gone. And I did. I had several relapses, and the most important thing was getting back on that recovery program. And when I think of all the things that I lost during my eating disorder, weight seems so vastly insignificant. So then I questioned, would I ever trust myself again? Would others ever trust me? You don't wake up and want to recover, and so stop looking for that recovery. Look for strength. Every single person can recover, but you find the strength, and that's what begins the recovery and not the other way around. And since then I've spoken to so many people who identified as recovered, and they all say the same thing: you choose. And you don't know why always, but you choose, then you commit, and you do the hard work, and you falter and you mess up and you go back to the beginning over and over again. But this journey is what I do now. I bump along on a perpetual path of self-realization and learn every single day. Sometimes I eat bowls of ice cream, sometimes I just eat a salad, and some days I don't think about eating, and other days food, calories, weight gain are all I can think of. I have days where I lovingly embrace my recovery body, and sometimes I want to hide in baggy t-shirts and cry because I feel so confused about what a healthy recovery body should look and feel like. But what keeps me going is thinking of how cold, lonely and miserable I felt my whole time when it was revolved around food and scales. I think of the long-term future I want to have with the people I love, and that I want to be guilt-free without having to control everything around me. There's so much more to life than counting calories and hating my body, but I have to make that decision every single day, and sometimes I won't struggle for weeks at a time. I'm a lot stronger and my body doesn't fear starvation again, so those bad days now are very infrequent, and my anxiety is far less knowing that they will pass when they do. And it's not black and white. It took me a long time to learn recovery won't be perfect, and I won't arrive at it. I'll have to work at it daily, but it does get so much easier. I used to want to know what recovery looked like and what it felt like. The voice doesn't go away, and that used to annoy me. It isn't malicious anymore. It doesn't drive those behaviours. It's learning that you can be solid, but you can change in that moment. And it didn't hit me. It was a slow realisation. I could go for ice cream and enjoy the moment, try new foods while travelling, not have to know exactly what I was going to eat and how I was going to burn it off each day. I could go and chat over a meal without calculating numbers and feeling intense guilt the whole time through my head. I realised I was engaging in life again without being constantly consumed with thoughts about food and my body. If you put on someone else's glasses, you're always going to see a distorted view of the world. So don't look at your recovery and your journey through someone else's eyes. And dealing with a larger body is one of the toughest challenges, and is probably the one that I get asked about frequently. I highly recommend throwing away old clothes, throwing away scales, not looking at old pictures of yourself, cleansing your social media and following people that are inspirational in this body acceptance community. Let go. Control is my best friend, and thinking it's okay to move on and to eat what I want that feels good, even though my head tells me that that's opposite every day, even years down the line. I always bring myself back to letting go of that control and how wonderful it is. Habits take a long time to develop, like the eating disorder did. It won't form overnight. And for years I kept myself smaller and was healthy because it gave me the illusion of control. But all I was doing was still being in a cage. I just built a larger cage. And only when I fully let go and opened those doors and trusted myself and then accepted the changes that I needed to make was recovery ever possible. And it isn't perfect, it's slow learning and years of developing new patterns and being patient. And big things have to be taken one step at a time, which is a boring cliche. But now I go to sleep filled, not with guilt and shame, but pride and strength for overcoming those struggles.